I just ask you what you feel the near future holds for budding creatives who need finance, and if you have any tips for people who are looking. Maybe I'll start with Henry.
Okay, thank you very much, Olaokun. I would like to say that from a financial services perspective, it's always about trying to have a documentation in place. So you also need to be able to show what you've done. And that requires researching, doing your homework well. So from what is available, what Sterling Bank does today is supports from a CSR perspective. So we have a CSR budget, and that is what we would put behind any opportunity that we thought was really, really great in the creative art space. And we have done a few partnerships and collaborations with creative artists, which I will talk about later on. Thank you.
Thanks, Henry. When I raised my hand, I was only half joking. We do finance the art, but we also co-fund lots of things with partners. So, for example, with Sterling Bank, we're co-funding a film project. So, yes, I am. But to answer the question, I think there's a few simple things. One is knowing when to ask. Many organizations have working financial years, essentially. So the British Council, for example, our financial year is April to March. So somebody coming to ask me for money in April, actually April is probably good, but somebody coming to ask me for money in September doesn't stand a chance, right? Because I'm halfway through the financial year. If I don't know what I'm doing in that financial year by that point, I really should go. So I think knowing when to ask, and different organizations, Sterling and many Nigerian corporates have a January to December financial year. And the best time to ask is typically a few months before the financial year starts. By that point, the current financial year is underway, they know what they're doing, but they're also starting to think about what are they doing in the next financial year. So that's one practical thing. The second thing is knowing what to ask for. And it fits with what's the mission of the organization that you're approaching. We get lots of requests for things that have nothing to do with what we do. And people are asking you, oh, so if you're not funding my project, what are you funding? And it's kind of like, go to the website. You know? So I think two is researching and knowing what the organization does. And sometimes it's not even so much that what they're asking for is the wrong thing. It's just the words and the terminology, right? For a funder, for a typical funder, and I'm sure Henry will have the same thing, you get lots and lots of requests. And you want to push them through as efficiently as you can, which means you don't spend that much time on any proposal. So you want to see, like, the words. If I'm talking about cultural relations, or I'm talking about connections, or I'm talking about art and young people, like, my first thing is we're skimming, like, do I see the words? Do I see words that relate to what I want to fund? So I think that's another really critical thing, knowing what to ask for, and I suppose how is the second thing, which is in the words that you're using, relating it back to the mission. And I suppose the final thing is make it as easy as possible for people to give you money, which is another thing we find. Somebody wants something and they write me a letter and say, let's have a meeting. And I say, what about this wonderful innovative project? What is it about? You know, and we're going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. What kind of support do you want? Financial. What does that mean? Is it financial 50 million? You know. So it's also making it easy for people to give you money by being as clear and direct as possible. Final thing in terms of prospects, I think increasingly there is money to fund the arts and creative industries, but we find that even where there's money, people can't access the money. It's a shame that Ms. Luka is not here, because I'm sure that BOI will talk about it from their perspective, because they have got money and they're keen to give out money, but they just can't find people to give it to. And it's back to what Henry was saying about documentation, you know, and knowing the type of financing as well, because BOI gives loans. Loans don't work for everything, right? There's some things that you need your friends, your family, you need seed funding, you need a different kind of financing. It's also knowing what kind of financing to look for.
So I think I come at this from two perspectives, really. One is someone who individually has financed a prize, and I can talk about what motivated me to do that. The other side that might be interesting, and I don't know how relevant it'll be, but in my day job, I start up technology companies in the UK. I create companies, I build them up, I sell them, I do it again multiple times. And as part of that, I have to go out and raise venture capital money. So I'm constantly going out, presenting to people, trying to raise money. And there are a couple of things that strike me that I do when I'm going out raising money for my businesses that might be applicable if I was doing the same thing in this sector as well. The first thing is my core skill that I use, and I should say probably over the years I've raised maybe 40 to 50 million pounds in venture money for the various companies that I've created. So I've done this a lot of times over the years. It's what I do for a living. And I would say my core skill that makes me successful in doing that is that I'm very good at one thing in particular. I am excellent at failure. I am probably the best person in this room at failure because other people give up. They try and they give up, they try again, they pitch to 10 people, they pitch to 20 people, they give up. I will pitch to 100, 200 people. I will just keep going and going and going. When I was trying to raise money once, typically when I raise money, I will probably pitch to 100 people, literally 100 investors, 99 will say no, 1 will say yes. I'm only interested in the one that says yes. I don't mind at all about all those that say no. A lot of people are scared of hearing the word no. So what they do, as my colleague said, is they dress up, they won't just ask for something. And part of the reason why they won't just ask, I'm looking for support, I'm looking for funding. They won't ask, they won't say, I'm looking for 5 million naira, or I'm looking for 100,000 naira, or whatever. Because they think if they make it very specific, the other person might say no, and then they've lost the opportunity. But I don't care. I will ask you exactly for what I'm looking for, and you'll tell me whether that works or not. And if it doesn't, I'll modify it, or I'll try again with the next person. But the more specific, the better. And I go and go and go and go. I learn each time, so there's no point just saying the same thing, and people saying no every single time, and you don't change anything. You have to take the feedback and learn, but you have to get really good at accepting that you're going to hear the word no. The other thing that always puzzles me in the creative sector, which I work on a lot in my sector, is you have to get the story right. Now we're creative people here and storytellers, and yet we don't seem to be very good at telling our story when we're looking for funding. We have to really apply those same skills. How do you tell the story to someone in a way that they will say, I really want to do that? You have to bring your creative skills to the party as well. And you need to have your 30-second pitch. People talk about an elevator pitch. What's your elevator pitch? You need to have that tight 30-second pitch that if you bump into someone, don't bump into someone and say, can I have a meeting with you? Because they'll say yes and they mean no. They'll say, here's my email address, and they mean send me an email, I'll put it straight into trash. So you've got that person. You've got that person with you for maybe 30 seconds, and then they're going to go away. So what are you going to say to that person, literally in 30 seconds, that is going to get them to say to you, oh, that's interesting, we should meet. And it's not going to be, can we have a meeting? That's not going to do it. So you've got, you really need to think through. I once went to pitch to some venture capital guys, and I went in and they said, have you got your elevator pitch? I said, yes. So they said, okay, come with me. So we went down the corridor. I thought we were going to a meeting room. Into the elevator, you pressed 5, and he said, go on then. I said, and then the doors opened. He said, you can go. That was it. I had the opportunity. There was a guy with money. This literally happened. There was a guy with money. I had 30 seconds with him. I didn't have my pitch. I had literally sat in front of billionaires. You only ever get 30 seconds. You never see the guy again. You have to say to him, this is what I'm doing. So I think you need to think about your creative project because if I got 30 seconds with the person that could fund my project and I was never going to see them again, what exactly am I going to say to them? And then you're up to something.
Great. Well, I think I've, yeah, go on, give them. You probably, I think based just on what you heard just so far, somebody could test somewhere where maybe they might not have before. Those are great tips. I mean, particularly, just persistence. Just take note of the process and find it. Get the story right, get your documentation. And for heaven's sake, that's the target. As we've been told. So now, we're talking, and probably people's minds are going very much directly towards the money. But we're really talking about support. And finance can go beyond, if someone gives the right kind of support, it can save you a lot of money, so it's equivalent to money. So I would just like to hear from the panelists, and maybe I can start with you. What are the other sort of things that people really should be thinking about? That often they don't go there, they don't ask you, and if they had asked, you maybe couldn't have done. Give people an idea how to get out of that box of just thinking about money.
Oh gosh, that's a very good question. I suppose one thing that we can do well is access. So, first of all, as an organization that has been here since 1943, we've worked with lots of creatives and artists who we now consider established. So we do have quite big networks. So one thing that we can do is if there's somebody that already works in the industry that you probably want to work with or collaborate with, chances are we probably have a connection to the person that can connect you. The same in the UK. In the UK as well, we do have access to quite artist organizations, networks. So for example, the project that I talked about with Sterling Bank that we're doing in film, we're screening a number of films in the UK at the BFI next year, a number of Nigerian films. So we're not going to give them money, but we're going to help them show their films on a platform that's going to give them access to other things that they might not otherwise have had access to. And I suppose in-kind supports for tangible things like venue or artists. So festivals such as these, we're not necessarily going to hand over a wad of cash, but we can bring artists that they're interested in programming in the festival. What else? So I think, yeah, those are some of the key things. There's probably other things that I haven't said, but often there are requests that we get that we haven't even thought of. And it's kind of like, that's an asset that we have, we don't recognize it as an asset, but somebody sees it and values it and wants it. And we appreciate that because then it helps us extend our impact with assets that we didn't even recognize as assets. So there's probably other things that I mentioned.
So, I think those are very good points. I think for me, when I start on a fundraising, again, I'm just drawing upon my business experience. When I start on a fundraising, I will assemble the list of who I want to contact, and I need to have 30, 40, 50 named sources of finance. So if I was asking someone for in-kind support, often funders know about other funders. So I might go to a funder and I might say, would you be interested in supporting? They say no, and then I'll say, well, okay, can you tell me about the landscape? Who else should I be talking to? Who might you be able to introduce me to? And what I'm starting to do there is I'm starting to build up my target list. I don't just go randomly, will you give me money? No, what will you give me money? I don't do that. I have a list. I have my 50 targets. I know who they are. I know the names of the person inside the organization. I know their giving cycle, etc., etc. I know all that information. And I've probably drawn on support from other funders to help me pull that together before I start going. And so I think that's a really good form of support that you can get from other funders before you go out and look for money.
Thank you. And before you talk, I just want to mention, you see a big poster here and there, all the arcade supporters.
Is where you want to come up with an idea and follow through end to end on your own. Ojoma mentioned, she talked about how you could even open our eyes to see an opportunity that we're not milking. We have an in-house radio station that happened 6 months ago. and it's all about co-creation. So if, for example, my desk gets 50 proposals every week, somebody wants something. Once you're a bank, people see claim, they see money. And they don't most times do their research well to look at the areas that this brand is interested in. So at Sterling, we have what we call the 3 Fs: football, fashion, and film. And Ojoma has touched on film, and that's why we're doing what we're doing with the British Council in film. Now, if you do the research and you find that out, just yesterday we had a meeting with CNN, with Ilube. We had shared this with them, and they came to us with a customized proposal that cuts across the 3 Fs, and we're looking at that now. But the idea that I'm trying to pass on is that once you've done your homework and you are open-minded about your idea, you will find ways on how this could happen. And remember that you only just need one break, so you get that visibility, you get that platform, and then you get exposed, and more people see you, and that's it. So I understand the creative space, I understand how creative minds work. We're very territorial, but it's important to also leave room for plugins so that it's a win-win for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. I did have another couple of questions, but there's quite a number of people here, and since this is about money, I know you were hating if I don't let you all get your own burning questions answered. So I'm going to throw it open immediately and take a back seat. And let me see some hands. Do we have a roving mic, please?
My name is Arabella. I have 2 questions. The first is for Mr. Henry. He talked about CSR earlier. I would like him to expatiate on that. And the second question, you talked about territorial nature of artists. Yes, artists can be really territorial, creative artists. And the question I have is, when an artist has an idea, he tries to protect the idea, guard it jealously, especially if it's a worthwhile idea. And since the potential investors may not be able to understand the pitch or what the creative artist is trying to do privately, it may create a communication imbalance. And when the creative senses that imbalance and says, "Oh, I've already approached one person or one organization, and they are not really understanding what I'm trying to say or do or communicate with society," the artist withdraws. That happens a whole lot. So how can the artist or the creatively minded person trying to get funding overcome that barrier?
Okay, I will answer the first one on CSR and try to answer the second one, but I'll start with the last one. So I think that creative people are creative people are creative people. They're not necessarily business minded. So there might be a need to partner. So it's important to recognize that. I mean, you get a few creatives who are also, I mean, there's left brain, right brain. You get a few who have that. But it's also important to partner with someone who can focus on the business side of this great idea. And that way, it's then a win-win. And that's my attempt to answer the second question. The first one on CSR is, and I'll speak from a case study perspective. So Sterling Bank, a few months ago, signed up Olamide as our CSR ambassador. And CSR for us is big across 3 pillars: recycling, tree planting, and cleaning. So in a number of states, we clothe the street cleaners who sweep the streets. We keep them up. And then, of course, there's the recycling side, and then there's tree planting that we do a lot in the north. But we thought we were going to have the annual cleaning exercise, which we've been doing for 8 years. But staff just go, we clean and we go away. And we thought, cleaning sometimes can be seen as derogatory. So let's make it cool, let's make it fun. So we got Olamide to do a theme song, and then we, went to a few locations around Lagos, and we created a lot of excitement. I don't know if anyone saw it when it was happening. Either the video or it happened live, but we took certain locations and we created excitement around those locations. And we realized that the purpose was to create a mindset shift for people to begin to appreciate their environment a lot more and pay attention to cleaning and how you dispose of refuge and all of those things. And we did it in an exciting way that people got the message. They saw an artist that has over 4 million followers on social media sending tweets out and also pushing this campaign to protect your environment. And we did it with a lot of collaboration. So it was quite, there was a decent amount of media, but we got fantastic deals from the media because we just said to them, guys, this is CSR. And they came on board, and we got as much as 90% discount, 85% discount from top media houses in the country. So again, because it's CSR, people also look at a good cause and they jump on it with you. And I just thought I'll share this case study to say this is one example of something that we do in the space of CSR. Even in support of Ake, for example, this is our first time supporting Ake, and we will continue to support Ake. Is the angle of saying, okay, it's great, there's talent here, there are a lot of creative people that can get discovered. How do we play part in it? And we look at what the request was, and we thought, okay, we can take again from our CSR/sponsorship budget and support this cause. So it's purely a social thing for us. And of course, in the process, we hope that there'll be benefits. Thank you.
Thank you. So I have 2 quick questions. The first one is to do with scale. Are there things that companies look for besides numbers in terms of, sponsoring Ake is one thing because there's quite a few people, but then there are other creative projects which are, I guess, smaller scale, and I'm sure depend on the project, but I was wondering, what are things other than numbers that companies look for?
I'd like to use the case study of what we're doing now to answer that question. And then I'd ask this question, so what makes a consumer or a customer buy a product? Most of the time, the buying decision is first emotional. And then, of course, you can look at it and say, look, I can't afford it, or maybe for one reason or the other. But there's always that emotional driving force. Now, iconic brands have successfully been able to connect with their target audience in a deeper way that keeps the customer loyal. And if we look at how people connect, you connect from 2 perspectives, pleasure or pain. So if we look at the arts now, we know that most of the arts is all about pleasure and how people can tell stories that connect with people in a compelling way. I talked about Sterling Bank and football, fashion and film. These are passion points. And that's what would drive us to look in that area. For many reasons. One, not everyone is looking there, so it helps you stand out. By the way, we're not exactly a tier 1 bank yet. We're still in tier 2. But we recognize that if we can distinguish ourselves by paying attention to what matters to the target audience, we could get their attention and in the process begin to even co-create products that will help everyone win together. So I talked earlier on about a product we designed for women called the One Woman. And it looks at what the real issues of women are. It looks at things like infertility. It looks at things like the ability not to get finance and to see how they could be supported at a micro level by maybe giving a decent rate on a loan if the criteria were met. But it's really about connecting with the target audience. If you connect with your target audience, over time they become your advocates, and that's the easiest way to market. You would rather trust someone you know who is telling you this works for me than the bank saying, come, I will do X, Y, Z, if you see my point. Thank you.
Thank you. Many of you, I did very short introductions, so I didn't mention that Tom, amongst the many things he's done, was involved. I think it was one of the first internet banks. I don't know why he likes food themes. I noticed that one was called Egg. And you had called something else, something to do with garlic? Yeah, so he likes food-themed financing. Anyway, maybe you can also give some insight into the mind of banks.
Okay, so I've worked in banks for a long time. I was on the executive committee of a large bank in the UK. I'm currently on the advisory board of the Royal Bank of Scotland, which is one of the biggest banks in the UK. So you do get to know a sense of how they can think. I think if in Ghana, for example, banks are not engaging in this area of creativity, then the creative community, if it really wants to engage them, is going to have to take on a bit of a challenge of taking them on the journey, and it will probably have to do that together. You may have to team up with other creative people and say, how do we take this banking community on a journey that may not yield results for a year or more until they start to get their minds around it? And when I think about raising finance, to a large extent, is a sales process. You have a product and you're trying to sell the product. The product happens to be your creative output, your creative endeavor. And sales often follows a pattern. It sometimes gets defined as awareness, interest, desire, action. And it's like a funnel. The first step is you have to make your targets aware that you exist. If they don't know you exist, then they're not going to give you anything. So and you're creative people. So, are you sure that the banks are really aware that there is a strong creative community in Ghana or in wherever you are in Nigeria? That's your first job. Make them aware. Are they interested? It's one thing to just make them aware, but are they actually interested? How could you write things? How could you put things in front of them? How could you express your creativity in a way that just starts to catch their attention? That still doesn't mean at that stage they're going to give you anything. But now at least you have a community that's aware of you and is kind of interested in you. Then you have to think about, how do we create some desire? How do we start making them think we want to be involved in this? And finally, you push for action. And that process is going to take a year, 18 months, 2 years. But if you don't start it, it's not going to get there. So you've got to work as a community. Nobody should do anything. You can't say, well, banks should be funding us or telecoms should be funding us. No, they shouldn't. They could fund whatever they like. So it's your job to take them along that journey.
Great, thank you. Now, I mentioned that we do recognize the theme is the F word, but for us the F word is finance. But maybe we can put the two together. And again, something that I would have said in a lengthy introduction, Ojoma is serially voted as amongst I think you're one of the 100 most powerful women in Nigeria, Young Person of the Year award, and so on and so forth. So let's combine feminine and finance. What advice do you, as a very active female fundraiser as well as funder, what advice do you have for the women in the audience?
Oh gosh. Oh wow. I suppose it is a tough one. This might be controversial, but I think, without undermining or disregarding the real challenges that women have, generally I feel that whatever the objectives of an organization are, they're looking for who will help them achieve that objective, right? So I feel like the typical organization, if our mission is connecting artists across geographies, we want to connect artists across geographies, how we will have a diversity policy that says we want to work with 50% women, but who we work with, it's kind of like who will help me achieve what I want to achieve in the best possible way. So unless it's a specific thing focused at women or focused on women, it's just kind of like, how do I achieve what I'm trying to achieve and who can help me achieve it? So that question of are they female or not doesn't necessarily come into the conversation. It does come in when we're then thinking about how are we as an organization supporting women. But I would argue that the first thing is competence, right? Like, and I don't want to be controversial, but I see it all the time. Like, don't play the gender cards, right? It's not, be competent first. Let the conversation not just be, I don't want to be selected just because I'm female. I want to be selected because I'm good, because I'm the best, right? And so I feel like if there's anything I can say to a female person, woman here, it's like, be the best. Let your gender be the second sort of consideration rather than the first.
Well, it's thank you very much. It's nearly time to round up, so I'll let the last question come from you. Do we have one more? I thought I saw one hand earlier, and I'm definitely going to, there's a guy there, and there's a lady here. So guess who Ojoma has asked me to choose?
It also happens often that there are some companies who take advantage of the creative people. So how do we go around it? Because if a company approaches a creative to do something and they ask you to do it for free and you say no, then you're kind of closing your doors. But if you say yes, then you're like kind of cheap. So how do you go around it?
So funnily, that's a question that we've debated a lot as an organization. And recently we've just said, if we ask any artist to do anything, we must pay them. Regardless, even if it's 5 minutes of their time, we're going to pay them. But I think it's a very difficult situation to be on the other side because you want exposure, right? So I think if you're giving exposure, be very strategic and be very clear why you're doing it and what the outcome will be and for how long you will do it. And set yourself like a timeline. By the time I get to this threshold, whether it's in terms of time or in terms of a certain profile or just set yourself some sort of target. By this point, I will stop doing free work, which is fair enough because your landlord, you don't pay your landlord in exposure now. So I think while it does have its place and it does have its value, it has to come to a point where you say to yourself, right, I've got to this point, I'm not doing it anymore. And if people value your work, they will pay you. I heard a story of an artist once who said, I can't even remember who it was. I think it was a poet that came. So he said it wasn't so much free work. They wanted him to do something as a group. And he felt, he had done a lot of that and done a lot of group work. And he felt, no, I'm not doing it anymore. And he said no. And they came back and apologized and said, oh, actually, we'll give you your own show.
The big distribution networks, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google, etc., are fighting each other for the best content. They have staggering content budgets. One of them, I think it's Netflix, has a content budget of $9 billion a year to buy programs and so forth. Just huge amounts of money because they know that their platforms without content are nowhere. And I think that sort of mindset of the content creators actually have some leverage in the conversation is really important. But you have to be world class to get into those conversations. So, you really have to push and push and push yourself to get to that world class level. And then you'll find that actually there are budgets available for good quality, really high quality content.
Yeah, I couldn't agree any more with both speakers. They've really nailed it. The only thing I was going to add is that even when you're asked to do something for free, if you're not going to get cash, see how you can negotiate to get some extra. So could you plug into what they're doing that will give you mileage over time? It shouldn't be on their terms. You take your time, think about it as well, And I've heard a true story as well, like Ojoma said, where someone was asked to do something for free. She really needed the money, but she didn't want to appear cheap. So she just said, oh, well, my schedule is kind of busy right now. I can't do it for free. And she got a call back to say, oh, okay, well, could you do it for 5 million? We're really sorry, And I mean, I'm telling you, literally, true story, literally, she couldn't believe what she was hearing. But she came across like, look, I'm busy and my schedule, and they bought it. So sometimes organizations would push they'll try their luck. And so you also need to be confident. And going back to what she said, the only way you would do that is because you know you are good at what you do. So pay attention to hone your craft. And once you're good at what you do, the success will come eventually. It will.
Thank you. Well, since this is the financial session, we are going to pay our panelists. You're going to help us pay them with a mighty round of applause to say thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.